trolling Senator Elizabeth Warren as a snake, and in post after post, labeling Mayor Pete Buttigieg a rat. Two victims of this tell CNN they were so afraid of the online attacks they faced, they don't even want us to describe the circumstances for fear it would start up again. They both just questioned the politics of Bernie Sanders in a public setting, and their personal lives were exposed and attacked.
Well, just what Nick said, I think that's right. I mean, there isn't a Democratic establishment anymore. There's not even a Democratic Party anymore. The Democratic Party is a meaningless notion that the party, like the Republican Party, has been hollowed out and privatized to a large extent. There are Democratic elites, and so when we're talking about the Democratic establishment, we're really talking about a bunch of people that Nick also knows well, which really means Democratic donors.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
This election is the most important in the modern history of this country.
The election in 2020, without hyperbole, is going to be the most important election this country has undergone in over 100 years. Not a joke.
This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot.
There are just 8 days left in what is the most important election of our lifetime.
Where did you guys come to a conclusion about why Clinton had such a hard time just owning that she did something wrong with the email server?
You know, I know that Russia and other forces would love us to have a debate. This is exactly what they want. They want us to have a debate about the internal structure of Hillary's campaign, what's true, what's not true. And I'm just not going to play that. I'm sorry.
We came, we saw, he died.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It's like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
You know, people have said, if you look at, for example, the heat that ended up around the bend the knee at Colin Kaepernick. Mm-hmm. Many smart people have said it actually was not a thing. The Russian bots started taking out. Yes.
But I saw my mom. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should
this
be
is
running.
Not about.
If you're like me, one of the millions suffering from pain caused by migraine, Nurtec ODT may help. It's the only medication that can treat a migraine when it strikes and prevent migraine attacks.
Trump and the Republicans lose on Tuesday, and if they lose badly, it's not going to be because of the left, whatever that means. It's not because of the 50 Antifa black mask guys who roam around the United States breaking windows and committing mayhem, most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Rudy Giuliani, there's only three things he mentioned in a sentence: a noun and a verb and 9/11. I mean,
I'm going to try to get through this. Thank you for what you did 3 years ago today.
And I went to Wall Street in December of 2007, before the big crash that we had, and I basically said, cut it out.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. If we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
I can't do it.
We'll do it live.
Okay.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, hope you are doing well as we barrel full speed ahead into our latest war effort in the Middle East. So far, to quote Donald Trump,
I've never seen anything like it. I've seen a lot of bad ones. I've gone to a lot of hurricanes, a lot of tornadoes. I've never seen anything like this. This is a bad one.
So some interesting dynamics to kind of get started here occurring in the world. The first is the propaganda around this war, because I thought the propaganda around the Iraq war was really well done, really good, but this is a whole other level of censorship and manipulating the narrative in ways that was never possible before social media. So you have, and honestly, I think this goes both ways, because I do see a lot of footage that's supposed to be of, bombs hitting targets in Israel or, some of the Gulf states that are more friendly to the United States. I see a lot of those videos being recycled a lot. And so I'm not sure, and in some cases, it's pretty easy to tell what's AI and what isn't. In other cases, not so much. And in other cases, they're not just using AI, they're using recycled footage or old footage from previous conflicts to make a point. But it does seem like, especially on the front of, the casualty numbers and things like that, we're not getting the full picture at the moment. And it's interesting that that's the case when you consider how kind of transparent the world has become via technology like this, and, cell phones and webcams and streaming and all that kind of stuff. So I do think it is a little bit odd that a lot of what we are seeing is very carefully curated kind of video and statistics. I did just see a thing in the mainstream news that the 7th U.S. soldier has lost his life. And some of the counts from the Russian propagandists and the Chinese propagandists are much, much different than that. And so it's kind of like, I look at it like this, right? Obviously, the U.S. and Israel have kind of their own level of propaganda, which is intense. And then, of course, outside of that world, you're going to have the Russian propaganda, as we like to call it. Really, we know that Putin controls the world and is responsible for
Russia
everything.
did it. No. Russia did it. Russia did it.
And so you're starting to see what I think is really interesting. There's a couple dynamics occurring right now that Trump has kind of peeled off his neocon mask, peeled off his mask and revealed himself to be a full-fledged neocon. The first is that the Democrats support this war and would be doing it too if they had won the election. So spare me with your virtue signaling about who you voted for. Like, oh, I don't feel guilty about this because I voted for X. It's like, as we're going to see, they all support this. They all stood up and cheered when Trump said he wanted to invade Iran at the State of the Union. So they're all behind this. So there's that side of it. And the Democrats are kind of walking a tightrope because some of them are attempting to attack Trump for mismanaging it or this or that. But if they really wanted to attack him for what the mismanagement is, from where I'm sitting, which is kind of like the destruction of a bunch of American military bases and probably Israel. And this is just speculation. I can't confirm this because a lot of the video that's around could be fake. There's obviously a pretty strong lockdown on the region, but if the Democrats were going to attack him on anything legitimately, they could do it on that, and they're not going to do that. And we know why they're not going to do that, because they would be running this war if they were in power right now, and will be running it once they impeach him in the next elections, because the Republicans are done at this point, especially when the real info starts to get out about what's actually going on. Because I don't know about you, but so the second dynamic, I'm getting ahead of myself here. The second dynamic that's interesting about what's going on right now is to watch the Republicans, the right-wing kind of MAGA people who are accurately critical of the COVID regime and the things that the media did during that regime, now completely on board with everything the media does and says, because now it's Trump regime controlled media. So all the MAGA people have turned into this guy.
Ain't that America for you and me? Ain't that America?
StreamYard is updating shit, so I'm like, this guy. Anyway, so it's interesting to watch them all now suddenly become simps for the media, because the media is saying the things that they want to hear. And so it's just, when you're a person like me or like us, you view everything with intense skepticism, whether a Democrat or a Republican controls it, because you know that both parties are the same. Both parties are full of shit. Both parties are lying scumbag pigs who betray Americans and American values and sell out to foreign countries. We all know that. We've all seen it. And so the first item of business today is just to kind of show you what the conversation was before this quote unquote war broke out. And because I thought this was interesting, right? This was the conversation happening. Names mentioned in the blank files with emojis showing their ethnicity. Now, I don't even care about the ethnicity part here, but just some of the names on the list here are interesting. Chuck Schumer, Howard Lutnick, David Ellison. So I think more than anything, Sergey Brin from Google, what this kind of shows you is not that I'm not blaming any specific religious value for this type of stuff. That's not my angle at all, because as I've said multiple times, I don't think it's that religious group. I think it's a small sector of that religious group, in the same way that the Nazis were quote unquote Christians. Not all Christians are Nazis. And I think that same dynamic applies with the Jewish faith and people who are, as I like to call them, Ziopigs, because I think that's a less censorable term. I think they had the censors haven't quite caught on to that. Give it time, but they haven't caught on to that one yet. So I use Ziopigs. So anyway, this is what the conversation was until the bombs started dropping, right? And now it's like, what are we going to do? We gotta get their oil. From a quick look, this was clearly a Russian operation, as you can see. That's the kind of the point he's making, but not the point, as I said, that I'm making. I just wanted to show you what the conversation was again before the bombs started dropping. So let's move on to the opposition to the war, the political opposition to the war, because there isn't any. And let's start by showing you some proofs behind that reality. Here is Rep. Mark Kelly talking, Senator, not Rep, talking to MSNBC. This is from Glenn Greenwald. Senior Democrats are making clear that not only will they do nothing to restrain Trump's war in Iran, they actually support it. Spare me all the bullshit, especially after Biden financed, armed, and empowered Israel's destruction of Gaza, that the Dems are different. Let's hear what your boy has to say here.
Khamenei being dead is a very positive thing for the region. But we have a lot of service members there, a lot of equities. We've got embassies all over the place. They have a large terrorist network. They've got the Houthis and Hamas. that are, in the region, Hezbollah. There are options.
So when he said we have a lot of bases there, this was filmed on March 1st. Not anymore. If you've been paying attention to the news, and again, I'm not 100% sure how much of this stuff is actually true, because in the fog of war, there's a lot of propaganda. There's on both sides. There's a lot of people kind of pushing stuff I've seen from the, Iranian side that could be complete false. Could be, I won't get into it, but I think that our intelligence community combined with the intelligence community of our best friend in the Middle East has a lot. Let's say it like this. That entity spends a lot of money employing a lot of useless people to enforce and dig through, social media and stuff like that. So anyway, I guess the point I'm making is I don't buy it. Kind of a long-winded way to make that point. So he wants to know what the strategy is going forward. Listen.
Iranian regime, whoever comes next, has to target U.S. citizens.
Two more quick critical questions for you. If there is a war powers vote, Senator, will you be a yes?
Well, I'm going to have to take a close look at it. I want to hear from the White House what their strategy is going forward. I would say at this point it's rather unlikely that I would be. They went into this without any discussion with us ahead of time.
From a guy who was in the military, I actually think that's a pretty fair response, what he said there. Not to kind of shit on Glenn or anything, because I think Glenn's right. At the end of the day, the Democrats will support this and do. But also what he said here at least has some nuance, right? Like he didn't just go, yeah, let's get him. He didn't pull a Hegseth maneuver. What he's saying is, if I look at the strategy and I think it might work, maybe I'll vote yes. But right now it's unlikely. So you got to give the guy a little bit of credit for kind of having some brains and nuance.
And by the way, why on Tuesday, during the State of the Union, didn't the president make a case to the American people on why he is going to conduct an attack on Iran?
Well, that's just like your opinion, man.
So also, of course, a lot of the Democratic people who are, the few who are smart enough to be opposed to this and understand the history of our nation's regime change adventures. Here is your girl, Democratic candidate Kamala Harris, via our good friend Mad Crab here, putting it down for you. Here's what she would have done if you had voted for her. So what I think is interesting about that, particularly when you watch it closely, is they were hopeful, I think, that she would get into the mix, because this would have been, if you listen to the things she said there, and even the tone of voice, she almost kind of morphs into this like Barack Obama type cadence when she says that. Her voice kind of changes to, she gets that Obama swaggery voice kind of. I'm not gonna. They killed Americans. They have American blood on their hands. Like the way she says that, if you listen to it. And so I think that the fact that Trump won, and this is one of the points that I made when I didn't vote, is actually a good thing, because it actually gives Democrats and the quote unquote left more incentive to be against this, where if Kamala had won, they would all be going like, yay, look at our brave, strong, beautiful, woman of color has taken out the regime. Hooray. Oh, nothing played. Hold on a sec. Let me play that again because people in the chat are saying that nothing played. And StreamYard has been not great. So let me play this one more time just to make sure you guys saw it.
Adversary.
I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran. Iran has American blood on their hands. Okay, this attack on Israel, 200 ballistic missiles. What we need to do to ensure that Iran never achieves the ability to be a nuclear power, that is one of my highest priorities.
So if you
and
have
that
proof
must be.
that Iran is building a nuclear weapon, would you take military action?
I'm not going to talk about hypotheticals at this moment.
Which foreign country do you consider to
Okay,
be
so let's do a little bit of analysis on this. Hopefully you guys can see it. Hopefully you guys, thank you, man, for letting me know. Thanks for letting me know that you couldn't see the video. Watch this a little bit because I want to watch this again. Listen to, since we have to go back and watch it again, let's analyze this a little bit. Listen to her voice when she responds and the things she says. Listen.
Adversary.
I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran. Iran has American blood on their hands. Okay, this attack on Israel, 200 ballistic missiles. What we need to do to ensure.
Right there. What we need. She turns into, that's like the Obama voice. Listen to that again.
What we need to do to what we need to do to ensure that Iran never achieves the ability to be a nuclear power, that is one of my highest priorities.
So
that sounds so much like Obama, doesn't it? That's freaking hilarious. So for the gold today too on here, of course, the gold standard in any democratic conversation is going to be Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton, of course, very famous war hawk. Here's just a quick reminder of what she had to say from our boy Ryan Knight, Power to the People, over here on X. Here she is.
I want the Iranians to know that if I'm the president, we will attack Iran. Whatever stage of development they might be in their nuclear weapons program in the next 10 years, during which they might foolishly consider launching an attack on Israel, we would be able to totally obliterate them. That's a terrible. I want the Iranians to know that if I'm the president.
So it's the stupid is bipartisan. We understand that now. The stupid the arrogance, the hubris, the arrogance of impunity, that is, of course, bipartisan here in the United States. It's a bipartisan thing. And a lot of people have been talking about this, but I wanted to discuss this as well. Jon Stewart is a guy who I still, despite this, will give him credit for at least being much like Bill Maher. I mean, they're both clearly Ziopigs, as I like to call them, but they at least break the, and this is, the bar is low here, but they at least break the mold a little bit of the liberal kind of archetype and go get it right on certain issues that most people like in the current like liberal echo chamber do not. Like, you know, obviously the pandemic being a great example for Jon Stewart. You know, Bill Maher, similar things. And Bill Maher, I think, gets it in some ways on some things. But also the bipartisan, the war state, the permanent empire state that is honestly literally responsible for the downfall of America internally, they all agree on it because they're not affected by the waves of, you know, the ripples, the side effects of it that are hollowing out our town. You know, so before I show you this Jon Stewart clip, one of the things I think is really interesting about the dynamic that's occurring right now is there was a conversation about missile production. And first of all, so apparently they're running low on interceptor missiles, which if you were watching these videos on Twitter, looks like it might be the case now. I don't want to quote that because I don't know for sure. I'm not on the ground in the Middle East. And everything I see, much like everyone, is speculation. And I've definitely retweeted plenty of AI videos or videos that were like from a year ago or whatever that people posted and said were from today. We're all guilty of it. You know, it's in the heat of the moment, you see something and go, "Oh, I like that," and share it or whatever. But I think that given the information ecosystem, you just kind of have to look at things as from the perspective of, okay, probably a small percentage of the things that I'm seeing are true from either side. And so, you know, one of the things I thought was interesting is they were saying that the US is obviously, you know, and Israel are running along these interceptors, and they're sending a bunch of money to, you know, the weapons industrial complex here in the US to start building new weapons. And I'm sure it's going to work out great. But the point that they brought up is how corrupt the American system is, and as a result of that, how slow it is to work, to operate, right? So to give you an example, to build these weapons, which I think this is hilarious, we need parts from China. So if they're going to build drones to attack Iran with, like a lot of the parts they're going to have to buy from China. And if that is an insane vulnerability, like that is one of the things I think that's going on with it, because Iran, it looks like, has built up their weapon stockades over the last 50 years or whatever, just quietly and as a self-contained entity. You know, that's a big country. They got 90 million people. So I don't think the USA, we're so disconnected from the reality of what our country is doing outside our borders that I don't think we even grasp what's coming. You know, I'm trying to, and maybe I hope I'm wrong about this. I really do. I hope I'm wrong about this. But Jon Stewart recently did a piece about the Ayatollah here. And I think, again, this is a good example of why, you know, America is so stupid. He really simplifies this into a like Iran bad thing, you know, because that's the American mentality now, is like Russia bad, China bad. We are robots. We have no idea what our own country is guilty of in the last 60 years. Russia bad, China bad, Iran bad. We're just like marching robots. So here is Jon Stewart talking about the Ayatollah. Listen to this.
Now, let me get this straight. America and Israel attack Iran. And Iran's answer is to just attack everybody. You know, having been in a bar fight or two in my life, I'm pretty sure the worst thing you can do during a 2-on-1 beatdown is slap.
Right there, I call bullshit. Do you really think Jon Stewart's been in bar fights? I doubt it. Maybe I'm wrong. But
everyone else. Hey, not every part of me is getting punched. What are you doing? Hey, you. So wait a minute. Let me get this
straight. I think what's good about showing this is what Josh here says. Should be a national emergency just how much these liberal talk shows are continuously making millions of Americans gleefully incurious and belligerently infantile politically. Just a tragedy that this is the source that millions of people are relying on to stay informed. And just for those who might not understand why Iran did what they did and just hit a bunch of countries, neighboring countries, it's because there were American bases in those countries that have been attacking them. So they started out by disarming the people that are most likely to attack them, the sources that are most likely to respond to them. Now, I don't know if you know this, but the United States is a 250-year-old country, And Persia invented chess. That's one of their contributions to the world. I do not think this is going the way that Americans think it is. I do not think that this is going the way that the people who started it thought it was going to go. And I know for a fact it's not going to end the way the United States wants it to end. I do know that. So another aspect of this war is the support propaganda, the manufactured consent for this war, as Noam Chomsky would put it, as Epstein associate Noam Chomsky would put it. The manufacturing of consent for this war. So one of the things that you see a lot is stuff like this. And I think this is an interesting, kind of an interesting subject to dive into for a minute here. You see a lot of these kind of protest videos. M Street in Wisconsin, in Georgetown, taken over by a large crowd of celebrating Iranians chanting USA, USA. Not what I was expecting during my run today. Do you remember Patriot Front when Biden was president? How you'd always see these guys in masks like marching around with flags. This is the Trump equivalent of that. This is the Trump team's equivalent of, this is what they're using USAID and NGO funds on. These fake, like, yay, Trump things, yay, these fake celebrations. No one from Iran is celebrating their country. Hey, thank you for, imagine if a country just like murdered Trump. As much as you dislike Trump, probably, most people do. And I might eat my words. Imagine if some country just, shot Barack Obama's house with a missile and killed him and his entire family, and then started bombing the USA. We're just like, hey, it's just a military operation, guys. No worries. It'll be over in a couple days once we replace your president. That would not end well. And Americans have guns. The second part of that is when you think about the cultural rationale behind this war, right? The Iranians are literally fighting for the survival of their culture and their country the way it exists today. And the United States has these, kids who they've kind of duped into fighting for their oil empire because they've reduced the country to poverty over the last, 30 years. Like I could never be in the military. We were talking about, I have relatives in the military and I feel for them because I would be conflicted right now. I would definitely be one of the conscientious objectors, if that's what you call them. One of those people who like, hey, sorry, not dropping. Aaron Bushnell, guy called it from a mile away. So these fake Iranian kind of celebrations of the people. And this guy brings up such a great point too. Because he says, and this is one of the questions that I was asking, did they just have all these flags waiting at home? Like, first of all, who is just sitting around with a bunch of Iranian flags hanging out? This one, at least, there aren't a bunch of Israeli flags too. Which, because that makes it really obvious who's behind this. But where do they get these? I would imagine, I would not even imagine, I would guarantee you that buying an Iranian flag in the United States off like Amazon or in any kind of traceable manner would put you on some kind of watch list for some, to some degree, because of how, we all know how the leadership in America operates and who they serve. So that's really all you need to say about that. But I do want to show you the real science here, the reality behind these kind of celebrations and where these come from. And this comes from, honestly, a really interesting source in the form of comedian Leonardo Joni, who is kind of made her name just being an abrasively and openly racist by just making racial jokes. I mean, I don't think she's legitimately. Well, I anyway. This is, of course, that's the only people that are, so the way I look at that is this. The only place you're going to get unfiltered truth is from people like that who will tell you what they think regardless of how offensive it is. So while I might not agree with everything this woman says as far as, some of her comments on certain ethnic groups, I do think this is an interesting piece of information that she's sharing here. So she says, now you know where all those gleeful Iranian strippers on social media came from. Let's check this out here. The Israel-Persian espionage school, where they train future operatives for Israel 8200 who speak and write Persian fluently and present themselves as Iranians online. Check this out.
These teenagers may be Israel's future operatives in an espionage battle against Iran. They learn about Iranian history and culture and sing in the Persian language. I'm Reuters' Rinat Harash at Ben Gurion High School in the Israeli city of Petah Tikva. These high schoolers behind me may be Israel's future operatives in an escalating shadow war with Iran. They are enrolled in a unique university-level program titled Iran, Security and Intelligence. They're currently studying for their final exams, focusing on Farsi grammar, translations, and contemporary Iranian affairs. When drafted for their mandatory military service at age 18, they will be natural candidates for key positions in Israel's intelligence services. Because of their candidacy, the program managers requested we do not publish their full identities. Israel is casting more widely for Farsi speakers for its intelligence services. That would square with Israel's publication last month of what it said was a trove of secret Iranian nuclear documents that required marathon translation and analysis after their capture. And this school is happy to provide the candidates.
Interesting stuff, huh? So they call that the Unit 8200, and that is where the and you know that the United States is doing that on another level, which is why I say, a lot of the people. Someone the other day was talking about how the FBI might be coming to people's houses to like question them about things they've said online, and to that I say, come on over, FBI, because I can't wait to laugh at. I'll happily, I can't wait to laugh in your face about your job if that's what you really do. Go to people's houses and harass them about things that they tweeted. That you're a pathetic sack of shit if that's your livelihood. You might as well just, drink Drano now or something. Anyway, I mean, that was satire. That was a joke. I didn't mean that. Please don't do that. Unless you work. So anyway, moving on here. You saw the Unit 8200 stuff, but just to kind of put a nice little bit of icing on that cake for you. Here's a story that came out recently that I think a lot of people should know about. Dozens of anonymous threats phoned to Jewish community centers in North America, as well as Australia, New Zealand, and Israel. They were all widely reported as anti-Semitic. The culprit, a Jewish man from Israel. This is from the CBC. Israeli Jewish men arrested for bomb threats against Canadian U.S. Jewish targets. American-Israeli dual citizen, 19 arrested in Israel from March 23rd. This is from 2017, so this is from a long time ago. But this gives you an idea as to the types of operations and the level of deceit these people are willing to go to keep their war going. And again, I do not mean the religious or ethnic group. I mean the Ziopigs, the sector of that group. Just like the Christians, the Nazis were Christians, but not all Christians are Nazis. The same rule applies to the Ziopigs and the Jewish faith, FYI. So I just want you to know that I'm pretty confident YouTube is probably going to crush this stream. So please follow me on Rumble if you're not already. It's just rumble.com/POLYTICKS, or follow me on Twitter @RoadGrimes, spelled the way it sounds. And let's keep going here, because we're about to get into some some really good times here. I want to start by going down this road of why the Trump administration was actually elected, because in a world of American politics the last several years, it's basically been the South Park thing where you get to choose between a giant douche and a turd sandwich. Those have literally been the choices served up to Americans for the last, I don't know, 50, 60, 100 years or so. Definitely since the 1960s and the untimely death of Mr. John F. Kennedy. So since that time, right, we have been served up a lot of garbage candidates, and we basically have to choose between, shit and shit with sprinkles on it, and which is, the shit with sprinkles obviously being the Democrats, because, hey, look, it's got rainbow sprinkles on it. And so I think that's one of the reasons that Trump was able to win so handily in the last election. That and the assassination attempt, I think, probably factored heavily into it. And just a lot of this. I think more than anything, though, you can debate the semantics of this and the poll numbers and all kinds of data points you have. But more than anything, the reason Trump won is because people wanted a break from the status quo. And I've said that 1,000 times. A break from the status quo, something different. And I think that's one of the things that really pushed him over the edge. I know that's one of the things that really pushed him over the edge, because I know a lot of people that voted for him because he said no new wars. Now, I didn't vote in the last election cycle, so you can't blame me for either one of these catastrophes happening, because I don't think it matters. Like I said earlier, if Kamala had been elected, we'd all be cheering for the girl power overthrow of the Ayatollah. But I just want to show you why Kamala won. And let me just hold on for 1 second here. I'm getting a phone call. Go to a quick break. All right, sorry about that. Every once in a while, get a phone call that got to answer. So let's get back into it. So one of the things I wanted to show you guys is why Trump won the last election cycle. And this is just kind of a good little refresher.
The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake. So George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
But
So what's interesting about this too, and another thing that people aren't even thinking about, is right now, and we'll talk about this later, I'll bring some receipts for this, but right now, Iraq is in chaos. Like, are all the money we spent securing that country and bringing democracy to it meant shit, because now they're attacking Americans too. And I'm not saying that it's not well-deserved on our part, because these foreign adventures have been, have been our biggest mistake for a long time. One of the things that we do so stupidly, continuously. But here's another one for you.
We've spent $8 trillion in the Middle East, and we're not fixing our roads in this country. How stupid is it? And we're not fixing our highways, our tunnels, our bridges, our hospitals, even our schools, even. It's crazy. We've spent $8 trillion in the Middle East.
Now, there are a lot of people that are like, oh, I can't believe you fell for this con man. He's a con man. But listen to that. Your other option is con woman. You know, they're both liars. You know, at least Trump is a wild card. You're like, okay, well, he kind of like, especially this time around after they tried to put him in jail and stuff. You're like, okay, I thought it. If I had voted, I might have voted for him. Because I probably would have, if I'm being totally honest, because of stuff like this. Because I thought, you know what? We got nothing to lose. He's saying shit like this. Someone tried to shoot him. They tried to put him in jail with all this. Like it just, I can't blame anyone for voting for Trump. And I think it's counterproductive of people of my kind of ilk and political thought process to attack, you know, the Dave Smiths or the Joe Rogan types who were like, hey, why not? Let's try it. I think at this point, the best thing to do is be like, hey, look, we can't trust anybody. Let's all unite together and do something to try and fix this and make the world a better place for us in general. So here we go. Enough of my hippie bullshit.
Yeah. But America's interest is sometimes going to be distinct. Like sometimes we're going to have overlapping interests and sometimes we're going to have distinct interests. And our interest, I think, very much is in not going to war with Iran, right? It would be huge distraction of resources. It would be massively expensive to our country. Yeah. But America's interest is sometimes going to be distinct. Like sometimes we're going to have overlapping interests and sometimes we're going to have distinct interests.
And last but not least, we got this one for you.
Here are the steps that Donald Trump has taken to create a war with Iran. First, he tore up the Iran nuclear agreement.
I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
Second, he has escalated crippling sanctions against Iran.
The sanctions kicking in at midnight Sunday target Iran's oil exports, banking, and shipping, even though UN inspectors say Iran is still complying with the nuclear deal.
The United States will pursue additional sanctions tougher than ever before.
Third, he doesn't.
That is, I just want like, why would these people ever negotiate with us? Ever? Listen to what Barbara Walters says right here. Listen to this.
Did crippling sanctions against Iran.
The sanctions kicking in at midnight Sunday target Iran's oil exports, banking, and shipping, even though UN inspectors say Iran is still complying with the nuclear deal.
Sanctions, even though the UN says they're complying with the deal. They're doing what they were asked to do, but we're not. What, like, my honest, you know, I think that a couple things here. A couple things. I think that their good-naturedness and their kind of patience with us over these last several years has been to kind of mask also like what they were doing low-key on the back end and building up a stockpile, because despite Trump coming on TV constantly now and saying that they want to surrender, they're going to surrender, or they're out of missiles or whatever, every time he says that, another wave of missiles goes out. So I don't think that the U.S. fully understands the backlash that they've unleashed yet. And I really believe that the propaganda wall has been put up. I don't think that people are really seeing what's truly happening right now. And it's kind of, to me, that's the thing that is the most angering about this, because again, one of the reasons I think that the Trump administration came into power is because they said, hey, we're going to be transparent. We're not going to put limits on social media. We're going to advocate for free speech. And they've done pretty much the opposite of all of that stuff. You know, they've advocated for speech to be stifled, or kind of like oppressed on behalf of one specific group. I won't say who that group is, but I think you know. So I want to talk now about the war that Donald Trump and the United States started. I mean, we can blame Israel all we want, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with us. Israel wouldn't have the firepower or the kind of the backing that they do or the ability to do what they do without our help. And we've definitely, so we're ultimately responsible for what has happened and what will happen here in the US. And I don't think Americans, what sucks about that though, too, again, is we didn't vote for this. No, not even the Republicans voted for war with Iran, regardless of who you are or what you think. I think we knew we were probably going to get it, regardless of who we voted for. But I know that no one, I think a lot, again, I'm positive that a lot of people voted for Trump on the hope that he was the less likely candidate to try and ignite another foreign war like this. And it's a foreign war, I think that, and this is my opinion completely, so I don't want anyone to get too upset here. I think it's a war that we're going to lose, unfortunately. And not even because we want, not even because we're not good enough to win it. Because the stakes involved for each side of this are completely counterbalanced. Americans, like, Iran's no threat to the United States. Like, American soldiers, eventually, if a lot of them start dying, like, they're not going to go fight in Iran for Israel. And so I think one of the things that is kind of scary about this is, and you see this starting to ratchet up, is the fake attacks, fake terror attacks in the United States. Well, you just saw this one in Austin, Texas, and I don't even want to read into the details of it, because to me, none of it matters. The fact that the guy had a shirt that said, like, property of Allah or whatever, and an Iranian flag is proof it's a fake shooting set up by these fake turds in Kash Patel's FBI and these fake turds, the Zio pig fucking intelligence people who are the least intelligent pigs on the face of the planet. And I feel bad for, the operatives online who work for companies like YouTube who are basically under those pigs. Like, you're doing the bidding of those pigs. Sad existence for those people. So if you're one of those people that has to censor streams like mine or Jimmy Dores or anyone who's kind of like telling the truth about things, wow, I don't feel bad for you because you're kind of doing it by choice. But I do feel bad for you too, because probably economically you might be painted into a corner or something, and maybe your lifestyle won't be, but sack up. That's all I got to say. Like, if you're one of those bags of shit that spreads fake propaganda on behalf of a failing empire, just hang it up. Go live in the woods in a camper or something. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy the freedom of your conscience, right? Like, enjoy. You might not have like a nice apartment in Manhattan, but at least you'll have peace of mind and nature around you. And I think a lot of people are at that point too, where values are shifting. A lot of people realize how empty and meaningless it is to be a person like Mark Zuckerberg when you have to sacrifice your integrity and your sense of self to have, these material possessions that are ultimately kind of just shallow and not really as valuable as most people think they are. But I'm glad that people are, I think we've evolved to a point where, I see it in the younger generation, maybe not my generation and older as much, but they're much smarter than we want to give them credit for, and much more perceptive and much more unwilling to compromise in situations like the events of Gaza, for example. So here is one of the things I want to show you that I kind of saw at the start of this conflict that I thought was interesting. And this is, again, I think one of the reasons that the United States, I kind of view us, and I'm a citizen here. I'm a fucking, I was born and raised in the United States. I love the United States. I love the people here. I did not vote for any of what the government's doing. So I can be that conscientious objector and look critically at the empire and its failings, and see it kind of getting what it's deserving in some regards. here is a report about that kind of explains, I think, why you see Iranian missiles hitting targets the way they are. And there's been this kind of hand-wringing, I think, about, oh, like the Iranians are targeting civilians or they're targeting civilian areas. And it's like, bro, don't even try to act like you have any moral high ground at this point to act like that's a problem. It definitely wasn't a problem when it was being done to a captive population in the Middle East. So I don't, you have no sympathy when it comes to that kind of stuff. And you see, you know, in the cases of all of this stuff, the same thing goes with the Russians, right? Like the United States and its allies are the ones that are violating convention, violating Geneva Convention, violating, you know, the typical rules of engagement. And then when other people do it, we turn around and like hand-wring and pearl clutch, like, oh my God, did you see what they did? They're making war crimes. It's like, bro, no one can take you serious, Hitler. Like you're the guy doing the war crimes first, that you're provoking the retaliation. And then you're acting like you're some kind of victim when you hit first. It's a very common methodology among a very weak group of people. But this is kind of the linchpin of why we are seeing some of the level of retaliation that we are, successful retaliation that we are, that China apparently is helping the Iranians with targeting information.
最大、功能最核心的军事基地卡塔尔乌代德基地。基地距伊朗仅有300公里，能容纳约1万美军，拥有2条约3800米长的机场跑道，能让包括 B-52战略轰炸机、C-17运输机在内的美军主力机型正常起降。配有数量众多的加固弹药库和航空油库，在停机坪可见大批加油机、运输机，还有少量直升机。 乌代德基地拥有完善的防空设施，其爱国者导弹发射架指向伊朗方向。这是位于巴林的贾法勒海军支援基地，它是美军在中东的海上心脏，也是美国海军第5舰队司令部驻地。该基地距离伊朗海岸近200余公里。基地内可见美国独立级滨海战斗舰、英国23型护卫舰、巴林佩里级护卫舰等10余艘大小舰艇。 这是美军在中东规模最大的陆军基地，位于科威特首都南部的阿里斯坚军营。它离伊朗就更近了，仅有100余公里，最多能容纳13500名军事人员。军营内拥有大量坦克、装甲车等重型装备，停放着上千辆作战及运输车辆，是美军应对所谓伊朗威胁的关键前沿基地。这是位于阿联酋的载夫拉空军基地，是美军在波斯湾南岸的核心空中据点，距霍尔木兹海峡约200公里。 该基地拥有2条。
So remember when Jon Stewart was going like, why did Iran just hit all their neighbors? I don't even know. 72 virgins.
But ain't that America for you and me? Ain't that America?
One of the things I think I can be constructively critical about when it comes to Americans is our level of pig-headed arrogance. We think we're the greatest. We are the greatest. And no one embodies that attitude more than Donald Trump does. Like, I don't think there's any living figure in the history of humankind that embodies American, I'm the best attitude more than Donald Trump. And that level of arrogance always eventually results in a downfall like this, where someone who's smart, and I likened it to, a bully coming into a bar and like starting to punch people, and like, a couple dudes get punched in the face and start bleeding, like, oh fuck. And then the bully hits someone who's like trained in martial arts, and the martial arts guy kind of shakes it off and breaks the guy's nose and gets him in a sleeper hold, and the rest of the bar cheers. Like, the US is the bully, not the martial artist in this analogy. Because who has Iran attacked in the last 50 years? And people will say, oh, well, they fund terror through fucking, they fund this. They do the same thing that the US does, basically. But also we've given them a reason to, because we've toppled government after government in their neighborhood, much like with Putin, and are surrounding them. So how can you surround someone? Like if you're standing outside someone's house with a bunch of rifles and bombs, and then they put a gun out the window and shoot you, are they really guilty of something? Like, especially if you're there for 3 or 4 months, camped outside their house with rifles and bombs. Like what kind of a reaction do you expect? That's a provocational, it's an aura of provocation that you're creating when you camp outside, when you set up bases around. And the reality of it too is, in this day and age with satellites and internet and the ability of technology, people will say that some of these camera images are fake because satellites aren't that high res. Satellites are that fucking high res. The idea that like military satellites at this point can't see like a hair on your ass from fucking, however, like orbit, they can see everything. And especially the other thing I think is funny is, again, we think we're the bestest and that our technology is the bestest. And I would almost guarantee you that the Chinese and Russians have a lot of technology that's superior to ours, because the United States is a giant corrupt bureaucracy. Like I was talking about earlier with the missile turnaround. In our country, to produce missiles at a scale that, a China or Iran could produce them, you would have to cut out the corrupt pigs, the military contractors who control the flow of weapons, because they won't let it happen without being able to take their corrupt pig cut. And so it has to go through all these hoops for it to become a reality here. And it takes a lot more time to divvy that all up for the pigs so they get their slop poured into their trough, where China and Russia don't have that problem. They don't have to deal with that. They have a state apparatus that can quickly snap into place and achieve the goals that it needs to achieve. Further, you also have a disaffected population in the United States that, I'm sure they would fight an invading force, but no one's getting shipped to the Middle East to die for the government in the no one in this country is happy with the government of the United States. So they also have that on their hands. So this is not and then the cultural, the whole cultural motivation, like I brought up earlier. What's the motivation behind your fight? Because you're going to fight a lot harder if it's a civilizational fucking, quandary or a civilizational dilemma where, if you lose this war, a bunch of pigs are going to come in and divvy your country up, and again, I hope I'm wrong. I hope that this doesn't go on for a long time and, all the bullshit that they're telling us is true, but I know it's not. I wasn't born yesterday. Unfortunately, I've seen way too much to believe any of the shit that they're shoveling. And, China helping Iran is, how could you not expect that? All we do is go around the world waving our sword at people like, we're at Taiwan. Here's another thing I learned today, because I have family that's close with like government and military, and they were telling me that this woman that I know, who's a great person, is in the U.S. military, and she's a Danish citizen. She's pretty high up in the military, and her husband are both not Americans, and they're both they deserve where they've got. They earned their way up the ranks, they've shown loyalty and all that. But I thought that was interesting when I started to think about it. I'm like, wow, like this girl, and this girl's great. Like, she's a good person. She's smart as hell. She's actually a Muslim woman in the U.S. military from Denmark. So, she has that credential. But they just, when they told me that, because she used to work for like political campaigns and stuff. And I just thought it was interesting. I'm like, wow, you can like not be an American citizen and get like positions in the military that are super high up, and get to those ranks. And again, I think she went through like the proper channels to get citizenship and stuff like that. This person is like an exceptional person. Like she's the kind of person who I would like be like, fuck yeah, like that's the kind of immigrant we want in the United States all day. But again, it does make me wonder, about the high ranks of the military, that people who are not American citizens are allowed to ascend that quickly to positions of authority. It's just definitely something to think about. So continuing kind of down this road with the Chinese satellite data and all this stuff, and the kind of moral high ground that we pretend that we have. Recently, Iran has been hitting some hotels. And there's a lot of people obviously condemning this because, oh, wow, why would you hit hotels? How dare you? After what we've witnessed, again, for the past several years, everything's on the table. Think about this. Iran twice tried to negotiate with the United States recently, and both times we killed the negotiators. Both twice. Like after the first time, why would you continue talking to us? Like this is the thing that it just blows my mind that people don't understand this level of kind of just moral piggery that the US has reached. It's subhuman, the level of moral piggery that we've reached, where people will try to negotiate in good faith with us, and then we'll do something like that twice. And so when you consider that, you have to realize that this is why hotels are being hit. And this guy does a pretty methodical. This guy's a great follow. Ripple Brain here. In the lead up to this operation, which has been in the works for weeks, U.S. planners correctly understood that our bases in the region are indefensible. They decided to evacuate them, but there are tens of thousands of American service members in the Middle East. What do you do with them? You can't send your entire force back home in the middle of the largest military confrontation in years. Airlifting everyone to a country out of range of Iranian missiles like Egypt or Turkey would create unacceptable amount of lag time for restaffing the bases. Dumping them in Israel, Iran's largest target, isn't an option. So they put them in hotels and apartments within driving distance of the bases, and this is the result. And so this guy's, is Iran retarded? What does crashing drones into random buildings achieve? That must be Jon Stewart's burner account. They're really not helping their cause, lashing out at random Gulf countries. This is why they're hitting hotels, because U.S. personnel who is attacking them is in those hotels. And war is dangerous. I don't think the United States expected the level of response they're getting by any stretch when they opened this can of whoop ass. And again, sometimes I wonder if maybe the Trump people and the US military kind of didn't know that this would happen, but they were like, okay, how do we shake this like parasite country that's sucking all of our military budget every year? Oh, like let's just give them what they need to, finish themselves. Here, go ahead, do this. Because this is the other thing I noticed kind of following this on Twitter, and just to go into conspiracy theory mode for you here. This is conspiracy theory mode, conspiracy theory territory. One of the like people who's like close to the military on Twitter tweeted this thing out about how he's like, well, at least it's the Israelis who are leading the strikes on Tehran, which means that they're the ones at risk of being shot down. So to me, what that says is, okay, well, at the very least, the Trump people are making the Israelis lead here, which also gives credibility to the theory that, okay, maybe they were just like, okay, you guys really want to do this? You own our military. Here you go. Have fun. And then, but they had the intelligence to know that what the backlash would look like, because not only are, as we're going to get into now, not only were they badly hit, but a lot of the American bases in the region have been dismantled. Let's put it that way. And I like, again, I don't know how much of this is valid information. I don't know how bad the damage is. I wish I could like had proof positive, but I think Twitter does a pretty good job of, at the very least, community noting things that are questionable. So if you find videos, and a lot of these videos I have for you are stuff that I've kind of seen in my feed that haven't yet been community noted or taken down. And if they have been community noted, then we'll go through why. So why attack? Before we get into why would Iranians attack U.S. bases? This was a kind of interesting exchange, I think, between the mainstream U.S. media, and I'm surprised that the Iranians are doing these kind of press conference type things, because I would imagine that enables them to be tracked and attacked. But listen to what he says.
You said that your missiles cannot reach the United States by design, that you do not want to reach the United States, but you also said it would be necessary as a defensive vehicle, that you could if necessary. So to be clear, are you committing that Iran is not and will not build missiles that would have the capability to reach the United States?
I can confirm, yes.
Sir, if that's a red line for you, why is attacking U.S. military bases abroad justified?
But because they are attacking us. They are U.S. military, installations, facilities, bases who are attacking us. We are under attack. Why don't you, recognize this fact? We are under the attack by U.S. by U.S. forces in the region. So we have every right to defend ourselves. And how to defend ourselves? We attacked, the U.S. bases. This is obvious. This is a very simple fact. And I hope that, and I'm sure that people would understand that. We are not the one who attacked Americans. We are only defending ourselves.
So for clarity,
this guy sounds like a goddamn genius compared to the people that Donald Trump's regime is putting on TV. It's interesting, isn't it? So this is some early video that's coming out of some of the damage that's done. And hold on a second. Hold on one second. My account has been locked. Give me just a minute here. I need to authenticate my Twitter account. Be right back. All right, and we're back. Sorry about that. I honestly appreciate that. I got like one of those like, are you a human kind of verification things on X, and I appreciate that, because got to keep the robots off X if we can. So let's get into it with these videos of, now again, I cannot verify that any of this is real, so I'm just putting that out there. But this is some of the kind of footage that I've collected of the backlash to the attacks against Iran so far. And this is from March 3rd. So this footage is not very new. The word on the street too is that you can get arrested for showing for taking video like this too. So again, if you don't already follow me on Rumble, make sure you do. I'm fully prepared for YouTube to take down my stream, but it would not shock me. So here's another supposed allegedly video of the damage. This is neither AI generated video nor misinformation. This is indeed footage of the damage. So take a look at this for a second. Now, I don't know what part of like what the geography is of that. So, and again, I don't even know that that's real. There's no disclaimer on it claiming that it has been verified as fake. So I would show this to you just to basically say, don't believe the official news. Because again, this could be a very small area. Like, you know, it's obviously not, you can't see that far into the distance from it. It's a pretty isolated area. So always be skeptical. But at the same time, know that America All right, so here's another, just one more piece of footage of some of the alleged damage. And I think this one's a little bit more legit because it actually has, hold on a second. This one actually has a person in it. So this one I think looks a little bit more legit to me, but let's watch this.
Is the wreckage from a ballistic missile launched by the Iranian regime. What you can see is a civilian apartment building in Bat Yam, or what's left of it, after a ballistic missile directly hit this building. Numerous people were killed, hundreds were injured, and there are now soldiers behind me digging through the rubble to try to find the bodies. They are launching rockets at civilian buildings. This is what we need to stop. Behind me.
So again, that's alleged, but that person seems to be making the claim that a lot of missiles are hitting their targets. So it's not, again, I don't believe the official narrative coming out of regime media, and I don't think anyone who has a functioning brain does. So I just wanted to show you that that little bit of footage just to kind of give you an idea as to, you know, what the other side of the story might look like, and we will continue to wait patiently for this information to be verified. How long can this last? I think that one of the most telling things about this is going to be how the prices of gas and just goods and services in general, because everything's going to get more expensive. This is going to cause crazy. They're closing the Strait of Hormuz. There's obviously like a war going on, so it's dangerous. And this is kind of the power that Iran has to fuck with the world economy, and probably one of the reasons smarter presidents and smarter administrations never pulled the switch on this quote unquote regime change. But one of the things it also does is call into question the Ukraine thing. Because again, if I'm Putin, I'm looking at the way that this administration's been or China. If I'm looking at the way that this administration's been acting, I ain't trying to negotiate with you guys. It's pretty clear what the Trump administration is going to do. They have they have zero ethics whatsoever, zero morality. And that's kind of one of the reasons I like the tagging of this operation is Operation Epstein Fury. Operation APAC Fury was another one. Was probably the best one because it sounds like epic, but Johnny Graz on Twitter is calling it Operation Epic Scurry because a certain demographic is being forced to scurry from their homes as they are continually assailed with missiles. And it's really hard to have empathy for people who had no empathy for others undergoing the same, kind of damage. So there is that. And there's also this. America, fuck yeah! I want to play you this video right now that I think is a very thoughtfully, kind of well thought out summation of the current conflict. And then I'm probably going to pause it during this and rant a little bit, but this is from political commentator Shahid Bolson, and I'm sure he's a terrorist, but let us find out more about who he is. So Shahid Bolson is a analyst, strategist, founder of Middle Nation. So I guess he's British. But listen to what he has to say here, because I think he makes a lot of great points, and we will discuss. Check this out.
How much more damage Iran can absorb than you can absorb? Do you have any idea how much more damage Iran can absorb than you can absorb? Their country is 70 times larger than you. 70 times. Their army is at least 4 times larger than you. And their soldiers aren't on TikTok. They're not quitting. They're not refusing to serve. They're not getting taken off duty for mental problems. They're not committing suicide. They're not themselves. No, it doesn't even matter how much damage America could potentially do to Iran. You cannot sustain a fraction of what Iran can sustain, and that's just a fact. If this goes on for even just 6 months, you're looking at an economic toll on your economy of upwards of $165 billion. That's 35% of your GDP. Double that if it goes on for a year. And it can go on for a year. If it's a full-blown and Iran starts to get replenishments of their artillery from Russia, China, North Korea, whatever, and if they reactivate their proxies, oh yes, it can go on. And yes, the fact of the matter is that your people all have somewhere else to go when things get bad. Iranians don't. You understand? Iranians don't even have to carry out a mass casualty attack in Israel. They don't have to focus on that. All they have to do is land one rocket in one building, and everyone in every apartment of that building is on a plane to New York. They're on a plane to Paris or to Moscow. They can literally depopulate your whole country just by targeting infrastructure. Because at the end of the day, you're all pampered Westerners, after all. You're not trying to live without Wi-Fi and cappuccinos. You know it and I know it. You're not ready to die for this cause. I mean, be serious. And then there's the fact that, what do you think happens? If they escalate, what do you think happens when American soldiers start dying for you? Listen, Americans don't even want to see American soldiers overseas supposedly dying for their own country in Iraq, in Afghanistan, or wherever else, according to the rationale that they give their soldiers and their soldiers' families. You notice that they didn't even send their own soldiers to go and fight in Ukraine against their arch enemy, Russia. I mean, firstly, what on earth makes you think that they're even going to be willing to fight and die for you when they don't even want to send their soldiers, like I said, to go fight and die supposedly for their own country, you know, in various military engagements around the world? What makes you think that you're not just going to get Ukrained out of existence by your best friend, Uncle Sam? They're willing to fight Russia down to the last Ukrainian. What makes you think that they're not going to be willing to fight Iran all the way down to the last Israeli? Wallahi, you're not reading the room at all.
So very interesting take from Mr. Shahid Bolson on the difference between the Persian motivation, the Iranian motivation, and the American motivation behind this war. He brought up a great point. The United States wasn't even willing to use their own troops to fight Russia in Ukraine. And what a sad story that country is. I mean, you would think that some of these people would be able to see through the bullshit, after the United States has just done this time and time again. But this is one of those things where I think social media has become such a powerful tool, because it's become it's really become powerful in countries like Europe that allow it as a way to whip their population, propagandize their population. In countries like Sweden, and in Scandinavia used to be like very peace-loving, neutral culture, and now they're like warmongering against Russia on behalf of the US, because I think largely of like Facebook nonsense, But I don't think long term this is tenable, and here's why. This is a guy, Alon Mizrahi, who is a here. Let's look at his profile, because this guy is kind of a G. But here's his bio: ex-Israeli, anti-blank, anti-Zapig, Arab Jew, freedom, dignity, solidarity for all. The global South will win. Follow my Substack for more. So just to go back to his comments here, let's read these. Are we understanding that the current phase of the war is Iran toying with Western missile defense systems? The actual damage carnage hasn't even begun. Are we getting that this is just the prelude to the war, and the West's hold over West Asia is already slipping? In a couple more days, in my estimation, more than a week, interceptor inventory is going to begin to go dry. Initially, Iran's neighbors will be at its mercy completely. Could this be when we start to hear calls for U.S. forces to leave the region? I won't rule this out. American forces will be nowhere in sight when within 500 miles from Iranian borders, with bigger concentration of men and equipment held 5,000 kilometers away, which is ridiculously useless. This is while Iran's military capabilities and chain of command are 100% intact, its territorial integrity cannot be breached even in fantasy scenarios, and its oil and munitions supplies are full and guaranteed for a long, long time. This is while Iran has hardly used some of the mightier weapons in its arsenal, while the Hormuz Strait is already closed shut, the Red Sea is blocked for Western traffic, or will become so soon. This is while the Western coalition of blank PDF file hoes cannot even dream of commanding the 3 million soldier military required to challenge Iran. Remember, there's 90 million people in this country. And even if they did, there's no way for them to come near Iran without being torn to shreds by drone swarms, hypersonic missiles, and minefields on land and at sea. And while Iran's strategic capabilities are buried underground in tens and hundreds of locations across a giant country backed by the world's leading industrial power and another military superpower, both just around the corner, while Iran has intelligence gathering capabilities that are equal or better than what the West has, while Iran has a land army including reservists and volunteers that number in the millions, and if that's not enough, they are Shia Muslims. Do you understand how utterly ridiculous Western threats and aspirations are? Iran has cost them in 6 days what the Iraq war cost in 6 years, and Iran is not swinging wildly in desperation. It is closely following the instructions in a manual. The PDF file hoes will mass murder innocent Iranian men, women, and children. Tragically, nothing can prevent this. The Iranian people will pay the price for removing the Western sickness from the human body. The one thing that could really change the course of this war and make Iran's triumph much swifter and less painful is China taking over Taiwan. Once this is also done, the U.S. empire will be officially over, and it's only a matter of time now, a year, 2 years, maybe 3 or 4, but that's it. The decaying, incestuous, rotting Western elites are dying, and this time there is no way they can access enough native children's blood to sustain themselves. It's game over. We're watching some of the greatest days in all of history. Now, that might just be a nice fantasy. I mean, but as a guy who's over there, who's Israeli and Persian and knows the culture a lot better than I do, I definitely believe the stuff he's saying there a lot more than I believe the propaganda slop being served up in regime media right now. It's not just the casualty numbers alone. I'm not buying, and I'm sure that they evacuated military bases in, so it might not be as high as a lot of people think it is, but it's definitely not 7 people. I can tell you that right now. And there's rumors now that they have actually taken hostages as well. And those are unconfirmed as well, but they're not going to tell you until it's too late. Especially this government. It's funny. Again, it's very funny to me that the MAGA army, not the smart ones, but a lot of the MAGA people who were rightfully skeptical of the pandemic have now become this. So moving on, another portion of this that has just kind of become unlocked is Hezbollah is starting to invade from the north now, from Lebanon. And I'm going to read this for you. This is another rando Twitter account, but let's see who this guy is real quick, just to give you some context. Ibrahim Mahed, Substack says, oh, no, I don't want to. Okay, well, anyway, I'll have to do better research next time. But here's what this guy says. Hezbollah outsmarted Israel. Over the past 15 months, Hezbollah has systematically outmaneuvered Israel using deception and misinformation to hide its true capabilities. All of Israel's attempts to disrupt Hezbollah, including targeted assassinations, have failed, leaving the military blindsided and unprepared for the reality on the northern borders. Hezbollah's strategy relied not just on military buildup, but also on psychological warfare. By controlling the narrative and creating false impressions, they forced Israel to miscalculate at every turn. What appeared as periods of calm were actually preparation phases, allowing Hezbollah to choose the timing and place of their attacks while Israel scrambled to respond. As the full-scale war restarted, Israel even attempted a decapitation strike targeting Hezbollah's leadership, but it failed. This clearly shows that Hezbollah had full knowledge of the leak, making them believe that they were acting on secret intelligence while feeding them false information. Now Israel is in a full-scale war against Iran and is facing the enemy it always feared on the ground, Hezbollah. What Israel faces today is more than a battlefield. It is ghosts, a highly organized, unpredictable force that has exposed how little Israeli intelligence truly understands its adversary. Hezbollah's long-time game has paid off, leaving Israel struggling to respond to a threat it cannot fully see, anticipate, or control. Someone needs to inform Americans what is happening on the ground in Israel and northern Israel and Lebanon. So that's another part of this that I think the mainstream media is kind of ignoring. But again, you're never going to get any kind of like this detail of this is why Twitter is great. And also you have to approach this with the utmost skepticism. Everything that guy is saying could be complete nonsense. What's the source of that? How does he know that are questions I ask myself. However, I tend to believe, like I said, these types of accounts a lot more than I believe, Gunther Eagleman or one of these regime propagandists who's basically just spreading lies on behalf of the government. Now, if you haven't forgotten, one of the biggest political events of the last, 30 years, well, last 25 years anyway, was the Iraq War. And I've said many times that was the kind of catalyst to my political activation, you know? And so we spent, I don't know how many billions of dollars liberating Iraq, as now we're supposed to believe that we're doing with Iran. And I wanted to show you what the results of all that money and American lives are. This is the fruits of 35 years of regime change in Iraq. Iraqi parliament broke into chants of blank to America and support to support Iran in tonight's session. There you have it, folks. American regime change policy at work. Aren't you glad? Aren't you glad that we spent billions of dollars and, you know, sent hundreds of troops to die in that country? Because now it's such a useful, you know, launch pad for our war in another country that is next door. So another aspect of this war that I think is interesting, I've been seeing a lot of chatter about, a lot of war chatter. I should start a whole new show called War Chatter with Dustin Road. It's now, guys, it's time for War Chatter with Dustin Roadgrimes. Hey guys, the War Chatter is up today. Like, I heard some chatter from this one channel that, oh my God, China is like basically giving Iran these inflatable helicopters and planes and stuff, and then US is using millions of dollars worth of missile technology to try and attack them. So this is another one of those, like I said, this is war chatter. So I take it for what it's worth. It may or may not be true, but it would not surprise me in the slightest if it is, given the history of the United States in these conflicts and the ability to just burn trillions and trillions of dollars on complete nonsense. Hitting something like this with a bunch of expensive missiles is totally on brand for the United States. These are weapons that the United States is targeting in Iran. It's worth noting that Iran reportedly imported more than 900,000 inflatable decoy models from China, including tanks, missile carriers, and ballistic missiles, with their launch bases are inflatable. Oh shit, I should probably turn the fucking sound off. That's what they'll get me for. So this is a fake graphic, but just to give you an idea of the kind of stuff that these guys are pulling, this is AI, but very clever. And I hope that's not true. But like I said, if it is, it would be very on brand for the United States, of course. Now, the last thing I want to show you today in relation to this kind of argument that I've been making about how this is kind of a, what's the word? Civilizational conflict for these people. This clip has been going around, and this is absolutely just, you cannot help but respect these people when you see this kind of footage. It's pretty mind-blowing. So check this out. This is footage from, I believe it's NBC, speaking with one of the current generals from the Iranian military.
Afraid of a U.S. Are you afraid of a U.S. invasion in your country?
No, we are waiting for them.
You are waiting for the U.S. military to invade, the ground troops?
Yes, because we are confident that we can confront them. And that would be a big disaster for them.
Are you afraid of a U.S. invasion in your country?
And that would be
No, we are waiting.
That would be a big disaster for them.
I've never seen anything like it. I've seen a lot of bad ones. I've gone to a lot of hurricanes, a lot of tornadoes. I've never seen anything like this. This is a bad one.
So that's where we're at the moment. To my understanding so far, several bases have been destroyed, and the capacity to intercept incoming missiles has been exhausted. And so now what you're seeing is just wave after wave of Iranian missiles hitting, different parts of the Middle East, from Israel to Saudi Arabia to Qatar to Bahrain. There's rumors that there is, social upheaval in a couple of these countries, including Israel and Bahrain. Again, these are rumors, unconfirmed, but some of the footage looks pretty legitimate. And I just think that in a couple weeks or a couple days, like once the propaganda veil starts getting holes punched in it, people are going to really start finding out what the toll of this is. And once it's going to take, I think, this is my personal little opinion here, but I think it's going to take the effects of this really hitting the laptop class. So the type of people who work in media and journalism, once the effects of, Iran shutting off the Strait of Hormuz, like, $20 gas starts, or, something that's, prices shoot up. I already noticed, I bought some coffee today. The price was going down, but when shipping costs go up, obviously coffee is shipped. So it's a good gauge, I think, of economics, and my coffee is back at $20. So that, to me, and it's, I'm buying like a couple of pounds of coffee, so it's a decent size, like, of whole coffee beans. But I know that I know what the price is. That's a routine thing that I buy regularly, so it's something that I can easily track the price on, and it's something that I know is shipped. So it's a good gauge for me. And like I said, once it gets up to like $25, I'll know that we're in trouble. And what's going to happen is, once that level of economic pressure and pain starts to hit the laptop class, the media class, they're going to start leaking the reality of what's really going on over there, because they know. Like my friends I was telling you earlier about, who are in the military, I guarantee you they know what the real death toll is, but they're not allowed to talk about it. They're not, because I was kind of prodding a little bit, like, hey, what do you think about this? And they're not going to say, which good on them. When you have like security clearance or all that kind of stuff, you got to be 100. You got to keep it 100. You got to be loyal. You got to. I respect that, and I would do the same. I wouldn't be running my mouth about that shit if I had taken that oath either. But like I said, eventually some good Samaritan is going to get the word out as to what's really going on, and that's when shit's really going to hit the fan. And maybe I'm dead wrong. Maybe I was dead wrong that they even pulled the trigger on Iran, because I said a couple weeks ago, I don't think they're dumb enough to do it. And boy, was I wrong. But it also looks like they're going to be dumb enough to try and finish it, which is, it's going to be interesting to see how they try to wrangle their way through this, because there's already talk about a draft, which would be a death knell for them politically. If they instate some kind of a draft, they have to instate some kind of a draft. That's it. Prepare. It already looks like Vietnam 2.0. And someone brought up these great points about how Vietnam beat us in that war. Like, we didn't win that war. So I'd like to close on a positive note and show y'all what our country, what the United States could look like if we weren't a country that's currently governed by demon Zio pigs who want to spend every dime of our money invading and other countries and stealing their resources instead of being honest and honest stewards of the world and being morally righteous and being decent people. You know, given the news around all this too, I'm not defending Trump, but I don't completely fault him for this either. I'm sure he was manipulated in a lot of ways, and I'm also not absolving him of guilt. I mean, he's the guy who ultimately makes the decision, so he's very guilty, but I do think there's a lot of other people who deserve our ire a lot more than Donald Trump, and people like Lindsey Graham, for example, and the Democrats for not having any level of opposition whatsoever, for completely being, on board with everything that's going on. It's really pathetic. So on a positive note, going to take you out on this today. I want to show you what our country actually could look like if we actually spent our money on us. This is called communism. I don't know if you know about this. This is one of the foremost, most dangerous things in the world is communism. As you can see, this is what communism could do to your country if you were allow communism or socialism, the most disgusting failed economic policy ever to exist, to take root in your country. If you were to allow socialism, you might have something like this. You might have a society that looks like this. And listen, I say this, I'm going to just keep this playing as I rant here, because isn't that beautiful? Look, there's a lot of nuance to the way that politics works. And so I say this about socialism. This is an example of socialism right here. This is an example of a culture, a group of people deciding, hey, we want our society to look like this and be beautiful and exciting and inviting. And we're going to do that by investing our money in our own society instead of using it to try and colonize Iran and Afghanistan and Iraq and every country, because we're run by a bunch of pigs who need oil money. I mean, is there any doubt in your mind whatsoever that that's the case in the United States? I mean, if the Epstein stuff revealed anything, I don't think it's that people are pedophiles, whatever. Like, older men like to fuck younger girls, and as long as it's legal and consensual, it's fine. But older women like to fuck younger men. Like, no one's yelling at Cher or Madonna for dating 25-year-olds. It's just nature. It's how things are. Like, young and attractive nubile flesh is exciting to us elderly folks. Now I'm revealing way too much. But I'm saying I have a daughter, so it's like I'm not naive to the way the world works, and I'm also not a sick and twisted pervert who is trying to like traffic teenagers for my twisted fantasies. So all this combined, I think what I'm trying to say here before I got off the rails is that the Epstein thing, what it really reveals is that there's no such thing as party affiliation. There's no such thing as left or right. Noam Chomsky and Howard Lutnick are both side by side in the Epstein files doing terrible shit. And I think that's what people really need to take from this more than anything, is that, and sure, if there's evidence of illegal sex crimes and all that, prosecute it. Absolutely. But just also realize that what this really illustrates to you is that the WWE pro wrestling world you live in, where your politics of left and right actually mean anything, is over, because Noam Chomsky and Howard Lutnick are both convening and behind the scenes and working with the same disgusting, cancerous, powers that seep their fucking filthy little claws into everything in this world and make it terrible. And so that's the problem. And that's the thing that the whole left-right dichotomy has been trying to keep us away from kind of coming together on and having a society that looks like this, that looks like we want it to look like. I think a lot of conservatives at this point have come around to the reality that public healthcare isn't just like some socialist pipe dream. It's an absolute necessity because you have these disgusting pig company. I've said pig like 300 times. Pigs are actually, I need to apologize to pigs because pigs are actually like morally on a moral, in a moral hierarchy, pigs are higher than these people. So these people are less than pigs. But what I'm trying to say is we need to get to the point where, you know, with the healthcare and things like that, where it's like, this is just part of having a functional society. We all understand that, you know, it has nothing to do with these political boogeymen like socialism and fascism, and everything to do with money that's tied up in making sure that these things don't function the way they should for you know, the large portion of the public. You know, the reason we don't have public health care like every other functional country with a functional government that actually works and gets voted in and out is because there's middlemen making tons of cash on the broken system. And if the broken system gets dismantled, their money goes away. And so they spend zillions of dollars to convince, you know, you that, oh, socialism, you want your health system to look like Canada? Yeah, I do. Because guess what? I don't have to pay when I go to the doctor there. They take it out of my taxes. And that's the other thing. People are like, you want your taxes to go up? And I'm like, yeah, I do. Because I don't want to pay $3,000 a month for a fucking shitty healthcare plan that just challenges my claims when I get hurt and makes me fight them in court to pay, to like actually help me. I do want Canada. Yes, I do want healthcare like Canada. I do want healthcare like the UK. Fuck you if you don't. You're a propagandized moron. Go suck on a fucking, I was going to say, don't suck on a tailpipe. I love you. Don't do that. I'm just angry that you haven't yet grasped what the game looks like, my friend. If you're still one of the people preaching that socialized medicine is a demon, you're a moron. I'm sorry. There's no other way around it. You're being duped by the Epstein class to believe something that is counter to your own economic interests, which is something that Republicans have been great. They did this in California. I want to go down this wormhole real quick before I shut this off. I've driven rideshare for, you know, supplemental income for a long time now. And in California, there was a bill on the docket that was basically, the point of it was to make it so that the rideshare companies had to pay you a fair wage, pay you overtime, make sure you have benefits, all this kind of stuff. Because they did a study saying that, like, after it's all said and done, when you pay the cost of your car and the cost of fuel and wear and tear and all that kind of stuff versus what you make doing rideshare, it's less than minimum wage. And that's against the law to do that. What did the rideshare companies do? They fought this tooth and nail. And again, the reason I'm explaining this is stuff like this is why we can't have a society that looks like this. The rideshare companies spent probably $1 billion on ads, convincing the public that the bill would take away their ability to like work their own job, which was completely flat out false. What it would do is make your part-time job have to comply with, you know, employee regulations and labor regulations like a normal company that employs people does. But they were able to, through propaganda, convince the voters of California to vote against their own economic interests and vote that thing down. And that's how America works now. They vote, they whip you into it. They're doing it right now. The last thing I saw on Twitter, get this. Amidst the war in Iran, what's happening right now, I should pull this up. I don't even understand what these people are mad about. That's how ridiculous they are. Apparently a protester at a Mamdani event had a bomb and tried to hurt him or murder him or do something. You know, something happened. I don't know the full story, but apparently some kind of a protester had a bomb near. There was basically an attempt made against Mamdani. Well, what a lot of these bloggers or these conservative mouthpieces are saying is that people were protesting Mamdani, and then a Muslim terrorist came and attacked the people protesting Mamdani. Like a bunch of Muslim terrorists are like protecting him from protesters. Now, First of all, just the idea that this is what these people are upset about right now is hilarious. It's clearly like some kind of a distraction, some kind of a way to like get at Mamdani or something. But how dumb would you have to be to not see how this kind of stuff is clearly, propaganda, staged propaganda by people that want us to get involved, the American public, to support getting, just like a certain event that happened in 2001. They're waiting for that big. Did you see the report about the guy in Austin, Texas that did the mass shooting down there? Supposedly he was wearing a shirt or a hoodie that said like property of the Quran, and inside of it had an Iranian flag. And it's just like these psyops and these fake false flags have gotten so ridiculous that no one believes them anymore. And it just makes me question everything even harder, because that's so clearly there's no way I'd believe nothing. I don't believe that at all. That guy is clearly some kind of an agent working on behalf of the forces that are trying to push war in Iran. And now I think this is one of the reasons, in closing, I will say that the quote unquote deep state was so against the Trump regime and Trump coming into power, is because at least with someone like Obama and Kamala, you had this veneer of professionality on these people. And with Trump, it's like these unhinged psychopaths at the helm, like Pete Hegseth, for example. And when you see guys like these guys are exposing what's really going on, where with the veneer of someone like an Obama, it's less obvious that this is just a complete scam to steal your money to do a war in a foreign country on behalf of these like moneyed interests. And so that, I believe, is the main reason that they did not want Trump to win the presidency, because not only his kind of like dick piggery and the people that he's hired that work for him are such morons that they're not as smooth as the Obama people were about running this kind of empire behind the scenes. And now with the Epstein stuff out, like it's kind of like it's all just out there on the table. So the idea that anyone would take any of these people seriously is just on its face ridiculous, especially after the whole pandemic thing. But this is my final prediction for how the war ends for you. I don't know if you remember this, but Pete Hegseth had this incident when he was back at Fox News where he did an axe throw. And this axe throw I would offer is a parallel kind of parallels how this war is going and how it's going to end. And let me just show you this real quick, because I think this is pretty much kind of sums it up. Okay, bye. So first of all, for that guy there, my bad guy, like I feel sorry for that guy. Like he obviously didn't deserve that, and he was just kind of a collateral damage there. But that's kind of how I see this playing out right now. Just the over kind of compensation is going to lead to unintended consequences in the region. And maybe this is 12D chess and those are the intended consequences. But I think that's the way that I'm seeing things right now. That's going to be the consequences, unfortunately, for the architects of this little project. If I was to ask the architects of this little project, how they were feeling about it and what their thoughts were, they would probably say something like this.
A great deal of money has been invested in this project, and we can't allow it to fail. A great deal of money has been invested in this project, and we can't allow it to fail.
Unfortunately for them, I think it's going to fail. And that kind of brings me full circle to the title of the broadcast today, which is Perception is Reality Until It Isn't. Because right now, if you talk to a lot of the people the true believers, if you will, they think this is going great. Just talking to, some of my relatives this morning and hearing their kind of feedback, because they watch a lot of regime propaganda and think that it's legitimate news. And now that propaganda has filtered into like YouTube and, social media and stuff where you can see stuff, they make YouTube channels that are government approved, like low key, to feed the same shit they feed through Mockingbird media, like CNN and NBC and CBS, through the internet channels. But the internet is undefeated. I will say that. And with kind of like, anyway, the point I was getting to with all that is like the average person, I think right now thinks everything's fine. Everything's cool. It's going to keep, and listen, I would love nothing more than to eat my words on this. I really hope I'm wrong about this. And in next week, I come on and I'm like, well, everything's great, guys. I was wrong. I totally misread this. And we're not going to be feeling really any of the consequences from this. Maybe Trump can pull that off. Maybe he can. I don't want to put it past him. However, it's really looking to me like this is going to be his undoing. And it's so weird because honestly, his undoing at this point, it's like his career is basically over. Like he can't be president again. He's been like, a famous TV star. Now he's been the president twice. Like, what else does he have to do? Like if he passed away tomorrow, he would have lived like one of the greatest lives in the history of the world already. Like, he's like, I've been a billionaire. I was the president. I had a popular TV show. It's like the guy's already won everything there is to win. So it's kind of like these people just pushed him over the edge. Like, this guy's the winner that we need to make this happen. And it's a civilizational battle, folks. Like, this is not... Americans are not going to fight a civilizational battle for a country that is not theirs. Just don't. It's not going to happen. Next week, there's going to be like this massive fake invasion, and everyone's going to be like shipping off to Iran. I'm going to be going like, I didn't think it was going to happen. I didn't think it was going to happen. Oh my God, the world is wild right now. I heard this John Lennon song this morning, called Nobody Told Me, because I listened to this old radio station, and they were playing that song in Strange Days Indeed. He was saying, nobody told me there'd be days like these, strange days indeed. I thought, wow, that's such a prescient theme for today's world. I got like gnats coming at me now from the light. But that's pretty much all I have to talk about today. I'm cautiously optimistic that this action will result in kind of like the peeling back a little bit, or the scaling back of American military bravado, but maybe not. Like, I've tried to pontificate a little too much recently, thinking like, oh, they're totally not going to do a war with Iran, you guys. They're totally not going to do it. I like that song. Yeah. But time's going to tell where we're going with this. And I'm hoping, based on the kind of the general consensus I'm seeing among people that I think I hold in high respects on social media and just in media in general, I think a lot of people are looking at this in the same way and going, well, this might be the kind of epic defeat that the U.S. military really needs to scale back a little bit and just kind of be a little more humble. I'm not, like I said, I have family and friends that are in the military. I'm not like probably as anti-military maybe as some people in my circles, because I do think, despite a lot of the shit, there's a lot of stuff that like byproducts of military spending that are probably good for humanity on some levels. I also think that the U.S. needs to be reined in, and it's belligerent, and we are belligerent. I'm going to end by telling you this. I talked to this woman from Egypt the other night, doing rideshare drives, and I got to tell you, like Egypt, some in the water there. This girl was one of the most like stunningly beautiful women I've ever seen in my life. Like I just like she was glowing when she got in my car, and I was really quiet at first because I just didn't want to, so I don't want to bother people. But then I struck up a conversation with her, and I was like, we started talking about the war and like the history of, the people of Gaza and the way that perception has been manipulated in the public. And I told her, I said, listen, I know from the outside, it probably looks like Americans are a bunch of pig-headed dipshits, but a lot of people feel like I do, that the United States needs to humble itself and needs to stop being the belligerent force that it is in the world. And what we allowed in Gaza is just unacceptable. And it was cool to see. You could see, almost gets me choked up thinking about it, because I could see in her eyes, she was like, I'm so happy to hear that. I'm so happy to hear, because I don't hear that. She said, like, the people I'm around don't talk like you do. So I think that while there is still a lot of brainwashed dipshittery in the United States, there's also a lot of people like us who understand that, like, look, I don't hate America. I don't hate Americans. We didn't vote for this shit. None of us want. And again, that's probably why Trump won. That is why Trump won, is because he said he wasn't going to do this shit. So what's next? I don't know. If the Democrats end up winning a majority in the midterms, Trump could be impeached and pulled out of office. And while I don't necessarily think that is going to change much, it might be a good warning shot to fire at future presidents from the public. You know what I mean? So we have that still for now. But yeah, beautiful Egyptian woman. I want you to know that America's not all a bunch of dumb fuck pigs. And hopefully someday I'm going to get to visit Egypt, and it's in one piece still. And I get to meet more of the beautiful Egyptian people, because this woman was just like 10 out of 10, intelligent and just physically beautiful, like mentally on a level that a lot of people aren't. And I was very impressed. Egypt, you're on notice. All right, guys. Well, that's all I have for you today. Thank you again for letting me get on my soapbox and talk my shit and smoke my stogie.
I'm a stud. I'm ballsy. I don't take no shit from anyone. I smoke my stogie anywhere I want. I don't have to find a hideout place like you.
I love you. Thank you for being good people and listening to me. And we'll see you next week. Where the world is at next week, I don't know. Strange times and strange days indeed, as John Lennon would say. And what can I take you out with? Let me take you out with my good old guy from the previous administration, Tony Blinken. We'll see you next time. Peace, love, gratitude, and be safe out there, guys and girls, and everything in between.